And the Oscar goes to Daniel Day-Lewis in my left foot.
And the Oscar goes to Daniel Day-Lewis and There Will Be Blood.
And the Oscar goes to Daniel Day-Lewis.
Picture this. You're on a movie set, and the actor playing the villain refuses to break character between takes.
Oh, così sta.
Shall we stop this bleeding?
He speaks in a 19th century accent during lunch breaks, practices butchering techniques in his trailer, and makes his co-stars genuinely uncomfortable because they can't tell where the character ends and the person begins. Most directors would fire that actor immediately. But when that actor is Daniel Day-Lewis, they give him 3 Oscars instead. Here's what's absolutely insane about Daniel Day-Lewis, and this is something that will change how you watch movies forever. He doesn't just play villains. He becomes them so completely that audiences experience genuine fear, not because of special effects or jump scares, but because they're watching pure, concentrated evil brought to life by human psychology. By the end of this video, you'll understand why Daniel Day-Lewis is considered the greatest actor of his generation, and how his method of total character immersion has created 2 of the most terrifying villains ever captured on film. This isn't just about acting. This is about the dangerous art of becoming someone else entirely. Daniel Day-Lewis doesn't act, he transforms. And the difference between those 2 things is what separates him from every other performer in Hollywood. While most actors put on a character like a costume, Day-Lewis undergoes what he calls internal exploration, a process so intense that it fundamentally changes who he is during filming. The method has become a convenient target for criticism. Day-Lewis once explained, "People concentrate on trivial aspects like self-punishment, but fundamentally it must center on internal exploration." This isn't just technique, this is psychological archaeology. Here's what makes his approach revolutionary. Day-Lewis completely rejects the idea of acting an emotion or moment. Instead, he needs to fully embody a character from the inside out. Directors who've worked with him describe watching him disappear so completely into roles that they forget they're directing an actor at all. But it's when Day-Lewis channels this obsessive commitment into villainous characters that something truly extraordinary happens. He doesn't just create bad guys, he creates psychological nightmares that haunt audiences long after the credits roll. In 2002, Martin Scorsese unleashed something unprecedented onto movie screens, Bill the Butcher cutting in Gangs of New York. This wasn't just another movie villain, this was a character so complex, so terrifyingly charismatic that audiences found themselves simultaneously repulsed and mesmerized. Day-Lewis worked with Scorsese to create what they called a character with interchangeable morals, someone who could be both ruthlessly violent and oddly sympathetic within the same scene. Bill Cutting operates by his own twisted code of ethics, making him unpredictable and genuinely frightening. But here's what most people don't realize about this performance. Day-Lewis learned actual period-accurate butchering techniques. He studied 19th century speech patterns until he could speak like a native of the 5 points. He maintained character off-camera, walking around the set with Bill's distinctive swagger and speaking in that hypnotic, menacing voice that made everyone around him uncomfortable. The result? Critics rank Bill the Butcher among the greatest film antagonists of all time, not because he's the most violent or the most powerful, but because Day-Lewis made him feel absolutely real. When Bill delivers his chilling monologue, "I took the father, now I'll take the son," you're not watching an actor recite lines. You're watching a genuine psychopath reveal his intentions. Leonardo DiCaprio, who played opposite him, said working with Day-Lewis was like facing a completely different person. That's not acting, that's possession. What makes Day-Lewis's villains so terrifying isn't their actions, it's their psychology. He understands something that most actors miss. True evil isn't loud and obvious. It's quiet, intelligent, and utterly convinced of its own righteousness. Bill the Butcher genuinely believes he's protecting his neighborhood from foreign invasion. He sees himself as a patriot, not a monster. Day-Lewis tapped into that self-justification and made it feel completely authentic. When Bill shows mercy to a defeated enemy, you believe it comes from honor. When he commits brutal violence, you understand it comes from the same twisted moral code. This psychological complexity is what creates the emotional roller coaster effect that audiences experience. You find yourself almost rooting for Bill in certain moments, then feeling disgusted with yourself when he reveals his true nature. That internal conflict in the viewer, that's masterful character construction. If Bill the Butcher was Day-Lewis mastering theatrical villainy, then Daniel Plainview in There Will Be Blood was him perfecting psychological horror. Working with Paul Thomas Anderson, Day-Lewis created what critics call both protagonist and villain, a character who drives the entire narrative while simultaneously representing everything wrong with American capitalism. Plainview is terrifying in a completely different way than Bill the Butcher. Where Bill is explosive and unpredictable, Plainview is cold, calculating, and methodical. He's the kind of villain who destroys people with a smile, who ruins lives while convincing himself he's building something great. Day-Lewis's physical transformation for this role was extraordinary. He developed a distinctive walk, a particular way of holding his shoulders, and most memorably, a voice that seemed to come from somewhere deep and dark. Paul Thomas Anderson said that only Day-Lewis could bring the character's complexity and darkness so vividly to life. But here's what makes Plainview truly chilling: his isolation. Day-Lewis portrayed a man so consumed by greed and ambition that he's lost all capacity for human connection. Even his relationship with his adopted son becomes transactional. Watching Plainview is like watching someone's soul slowly die over the course of 2.5 hours. Day-Lewis's preparation process is legendary in Hollywood, and for good reason. He doesn't just research his characters, he lives as them for months at a time. For Gangs of New York, he refused to wear modern clothing, insisted on period-accurate tools, and spoke in Bill's accent even when ordering coffee. This level of commitment creates what directors call authentic presence. When Day-Lewis is on screen as Bill the Butcher, every gesture, every facial expression, every vocal inflection comes from a place of complete character truth. There's no moment where you can see the actor underneath the character. Roger Ebert wrote, "Day-Lewis disappears into his characters, compelling us to question our own loyalties and fears." That's the mark of truly great acting, when the performance forces the audience to examine their own psychology. One of Day-Lewis's most powerful tools is what acting coaches call quiet intensity. He can modulate between subtle internal emotion and moments of explosive physical and verbal force, often within the same scene. This creates an unpredictability that keeps audiences on edge. Watch the baptism scene in There Will Be Blood. Plainview starts calm, almost bored. Then gradually you see the rage building behind his eyes. His jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. His breathing changes. By the time he explodes into violence, the audience has been unconsciously holding their breath, waiting for something terrible to happen. This technique blurs the line between hero and villain, making audiences complicit in the character's actions. You find yourself anticipating the violence, almost wanting it to happen, which makes you question your own moral boundaries. What separates Day-Lewis from other method actors is his collaborative approach. He doesn't just disappear into character, he works with directors to enhance and deepen their vision. Scorsese and Paul Thomas Anderson both describe their collaborations with Day-Lewis as creative partnerships, where the actor brought ideas that elevated the entire project. For Gangs of New York, Day-Lewis suggested specific historical details that made Bill more authentic. For There Will Be Blood, he worked with Anderson to develop Plainview's distinctive speech patterns and physical mannerisms. He doesn't just execute the director's vision, he helps create it. This collaborative approach is why directors like Scorsese call Day-Lewis irreplaceable. He brings a level of research, commitment, and creative insight that makes everyone around him better. Day-Lewis understands that physical transformation creates psychological truth. For Bill the Butcher, he developed a distinctive swagger and way of holding his knife that made the character feel dangerous even in quiet moments. For Daniel Plainview, he created a walk that suggested both confidence and underlying instability. But it goes deeper than just movement. Day-Lewis changes his entire physical presence. His posture, his breathing, even the way he occupies space becomes different for each character. When he's Bill the Butcher, he takes up more room, dominates scenes through sheer physical presence. When he's Daniel Plainview, he's more contained but somehow more menacing, like a coiled spring ready to explode. What makes Day-Lewis's villains so effective is their psychological realism. These aren't cartoon bad guys or over-the-top monsters. They're recognizably human, which makes them infinitely more frightening. Bill the Butcher could be your neighbor who seems charming until you discover his dark beliefs. Daniel Plainview could be any successful businessman whose ambition has consumed his humanity. Day-Lewis makes these characters feel possible, which forces audiences to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature. This psychological authenticity creates what film scholars call empathetic horror, the disturbing experience of understanding and even sympathizing with truly terrible people. It's not comfortable, but it's incredibly powerful storytelling. Day-Lewis has won 3 Best Actor Oscars, more than any other male actor in history. But his real legacy isn't the awards, it's the standard he set for what acting can achieve. He's proven that total commitment to character can create performances that transcend entertainment and become genuine art. Directors and critics agree that Day-Lewis has redefined what's possible in cinema. His villains aren't just memorable characters, they're psychological studies that reveal uncomfortable truths about power, violence, and human nature. When other actors talk about Day-Lewis, they use words like intimidating and inspiring in the same sentence. He set a bar so high that most performers don't even attempt to reach it. The dangerous art of transformation. Here's what's truly remarkable about Day-Lewis's approach. He's willing to risk his own psychological well-being for his art, staying in character for months, accessing dark emotions repeatedly, and isolating himself from his real personality. These are genuinely dangerous practices that most actors avoid. But Day-Lewis understands that great art requires real sacrifice. He's willing to pay the psychological price because he knows that authentic transformation creates performances that can change how audiences see the world. This commitment to authenticity is what makes his villains so unforgettable. When you watch Bill the Butcher or Daniel Plainview, you're not just seeing great acting. You're witnessing someone willing to explore the darkest corners of human psychology and bring back what they find there. So here's the truth about Daniel Day-Lewis that most people never understand. His genius isn't just in his talent, it's in his willingness to completely surrender his own identity in service of the story. While other actors put on characters like masks, Day-Lewis undergoes complete psychological transformation. That's why his villains feel so real, so terrifying, and so unforgettable. Bill the Butcher and Daniel Plainview aren't just great movie characters, they're psychological studies in human evil that force audiences to confront uncomfortable truths about power, violence, and moral corruption. When you watch a Daniel Day-Lewis performance, you're not just seeing acting, you're witnessing the dangerous art of becoming someone else entirely. And in the case of his villains, you're experiencing what it feels like to stare directly into the abyss of human darkness and find it staring back at you. That's not just entertainment. That's the kind of transformative art that changes how you see the world. And that's why Daniel Day-Lewis isn't just a great actor. He's a master craftsman who spent his career proving that the right performance can reveal truths about humanity that we'd rather not acknowledge. The next time you watch Gangs of New York or There Will Be Blood, remember, you're not just watching movies. You're witnessing the work of someone who's willing to sacrifice everything, his comfort, his safety, even his sanity, to show us who we really are when all the pretenses fall away. We are committed to releasing 2 videos a week. Like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more film lore.